This morning, a fellow woodworker asked about how to draw raked and splayed table legs, or actually in his case he was working on a stool. As it happens, I recently completed this model based on a small table from Poland in the 1950s. And it has legs that are both raked, that's the front to back angle, and splayed, the side to side angle. And I thought it would be kind of a good thing to show how I went about creating these legs. It's a pretty easy thing with an extension called Rake and Splay. So let's take a look at how I did this. So the first thing I'm going to do is run the Rake and Splay tool. It does have a toolbar button, and we click on that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the tool at the origin. So you click there, and then you have to enter some information in the input window. I want a 5-degree rake and a 5-degree splay. And I'm going to go ahead and set the height of the leg to what I want the final height to be. This isn't terribly critical because we're going to still draw the leg and set its height anyhow, but so I'm going to just put in 24 3/4 or 24.75. Segments relates to the number of sides in a circle that the extension will draw to create a follow me path. If you were going to do a turned leg and you wanted to draw it on its raked and splayed axis. We don't really care about that in this case because this is basically a square tapered leg. And I'm going to just leave this set to leg. Notice over here that there's a bunch of layers that have already been created. And when I click OK, the plugin draws in some groups, and there's, well, let me turn on all the layers here and so we can see this. There's that circle I was referring to for the follow me path, and there's a guideline for a centerline axis if you wanted to use that for creating your turned leg. And there's the rake and splay planes, and they meet at that angle that was set up. And then there's a sighting or a sightline plane, and that would be useful if you wanted to set up a sightline for drilling a mortise, for example, if you were doing a Windsor chair or something along those lines. For the moment, I'm going to turn off all of these, and so I just have my empty workspace. I'm going to draw the leg vertically, and then I'm going to rotate it into place. And the way I'll do that in this case is with the leg centered on the origin. In SketchUp 2018, we get the option to draw a square from the center, or a rectangle from its center, and I'm going to use that. If you're using an earlier version of SketchUp, you can either just draw the square and then move it so it's centered on the origin, or you could use the polygon tool and just set the number of sides to 4. So what I'm going to do is make this 1.25 by 1.25. So there's a 1 1/4 inch square. That's going to be the top dimension of the leg. And I'll use push-pull, and I'm going to run this up to a little over the height that I want, so I'm just going to make it about 25 1/4. And then I'm going to reduce the size of the bottom to put in that taper. There's a number of ways you could do that. I'm going to, since this is tapered on all four sides, I'm going to use the scale tool. So S for scale. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a corner, and I'm going to hold the control key, and I'm going to move the corner in, and then let go. And this measurements window in the lower right corner shows a scale factor. What I want is I want the bottom of the leg to be 5/8 of an inch square. So I'm going to type 5/8 and put in the inch mark, comma 5/8 inch, and hit enter. And if you look at entity info over here, it shows that at 5/8 of an inch. I'm going to also pull this face down just a little bit with the move tool. I'm going to come down along the blue axis. About 3/16 of an inch will probably be plenty for what I want. And I'm going to go ahead and make this leg a component. So I hit the G key for create component. That's the default keyboard shortcut. Give it a name, and I'll just leave the components axes where they are. So now I've got the leg drawn, and I'm going to turn on the sighting plane, and I'm going to turn on the splay plane. It doesn't matter, I could use the rake plane, but I'll use the splay because it's on the back side of the sighting plane. I'm going to switch to X-ray so that you can see where I'm hitting with the rotate tool. But what I'm going to do now is rotate the leg into place. So I've got it selected. I'll get the rotate tool, and I'm going to hold the shift key to lock the orientation, and I'm going to put that, we'll zoom in here a little closer maybe so you can see that. I'm going to put that center of rotation right at the corner, right at the origin actually. And once it's set, you can let go of that. And then I'm going to come up here and I'm going to just put the cursor on the blue axis, and then I'm going to bring it over and I'm going to snap at the end point here, or where those two planes come together. And that leg is now at the correct angle. So I can delete, or actually just turn off those faces for the moment. Alright, now let's get out of X-ray mode. Now I want 3 more legs, and I'll make those in a moment, but what I want to do first is I want to cut this leg off at so it's flat on the bottom, and you see when I stretch that leg down just a little bit, it made the leg extend below the ground plane, and that just makes it easier to cut it off there. And I know that I want the top of the leg to be 24 3/4 above the ground plane. So I've drawn this rectangle and I've copied it up. I'm going to reverse the face here on this top one. These are going to be used as cutting planes, and I've positioned these while I'm outside of the component, but I'm going to put them in the component, and then after running the intersect faces operation that's coming, when I delete things, a little bit of each of these faces will form the new ends for the leg. So select those. You just hold Control or Option on the Mac or Shift and select those. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut these to the clipboard. So on the PC that's Control X, it'd be Command X on the Mac. Then I'll open this leg component for editing and use Edit Paste in Place. I use this so frequently that I've actually set up a keyboard shortcut for it. But since I'm here, I'll do that. So those faces, those rectangles, got pasted back in the exact same location in the model relative to the model's origin, but now they're inside the component. So while they're selected, I'm going to just hold Control and I'm going to triple click on the leg, right click, choose Intersect Faces with Selection, and then with the eraser tool we'll get rid of what we don't want of those cutting planes. And then let's zoom in here close, and I'm going to drag a right to left selection box around the top of the leg. And let's just look around here to make sure. I normally don't need to do that, but by dragging that right to left selection box around the very top of the leg, I got what you see here selected without having to risk getting into anything I want to keep. And then I just hit delete, and there's the top of the leg now cut off at the right angle. And again, this face at the top of the leg is the remains of that rectangular cutting plane. We'll trim the bottom of this leg the same way. So just like that, hit the delete key. You want to look when you're doing this and make sure you're not leaving a little line segment sticking out. That would prevent the leg from being solid, and that just creates some issues. Alright, so now to make the other three legs, what I'm going to do is add just a little line segment, and it doesn't really matter what quite so much. I'm just going to put it there just because. And I know that I want the top, from the top outside corner of this leg, I want to come over 23 1/4. So I've just put a guide point over here. And now I'm going to select, actually before I do this, I'll go ahead and do the same thing over here, going in the green direction. There we go. And I'm going to select both the leg and that little line segment. I needed the line segment so that I can flip this in the right direction. And we'll move this over this way with the copy function of the move tool. The exact distance doesn't matter. We can come here, for example. And then I'm going to right click and choose flip along the red direction. If I only had the leg component, it would give me the opportunity to flip along the component's axes rather than the model axes, but I want to flip along the model axes in this case. And then I can move that over to that point. And then I don't need the line segments anymore, so I'll just clean those up. But I'll repeat this operation. Now I've got two legs to copy, and we'll just move these over sort of in this general direction, right click, and this time I'm going to flip along the green direction. And then I can grab at that corner and bring it out to that guide point. And the legs are in place. Hopefully that gives you some ideas, and I'll give you a link to this extension in the text of the blog.